What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Gamecite Chronicles, the console gaming podcast where we sit down each and every week to talk about video games. I'm your host, Bonfire, and this is episode number 26. We are technically halfway through a year of weekly podcast episodes, which is pretty crazy to think about, but I enjoy it. It's fun. It's why I do it. It's why I get on this microphone, and I love talking about video games, and it's fun. It's great, and I hope you guys are enjoying it. I want to say thank you guys for tuning in last week. I know I've been on vacation this past week, so I've kind of been MIA in terms of, social media and all that stuff, but it's been good. Sometimes you just got to disconnect and get away a little bit and enjoy life. And my wife and I, we had a great time. But we're slowly creeping our way up to 200 downloads for the podcast, which I'm stoked about, and I have you guys to thank for that. And I hope you guys have been enjoying the last couple episodes. I know we had our first guest on, Legend of Cotton, a.k.a. Jordan, who's a big Call of Duty guy, and he does a lot of TikToking. And I realized I totally forgot to shout out his stuff. So I know he's on twitch.tv/Legend of Cotton. I know he streams Call of Duty on there. And then I know he's on TikTok, which is, I'm not going to pretend I know anything really about TikTok. And I'll save my thoughts maybe for another day, but I know he's on TikTok, and I'm pretty sure it's the same handle, Legend of Cotton. So check his stuff out there, and that was a fun one. And I definitely want to work on getting some more guests on the show and having some just fun conversations, because it was a really good time. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And I hope you guys have had a good week. I know here in the Pacific Northwest, things have cooled down a little bit, but we've got another heat wave coming our way. So we're in that summer, that warm summer weather, and no complaints from me. I love it. I love the sunshine. I love getting outside and just enjoying it, kicking back, maybe having a cold one. Love it. But also hope you got some gaming in. That's what we're here for. We all love video games. So I hope you guys got to do that. And as I mentioned, like I said, I've been on vacation. My wife and I, we got back, what was it? Late Tuesday, this past Tuesday, by the time this podcast goes live. And we spent a full week in Hawaii, and it was awesome. We just had it was great. Now each of us have been to Hawaii once. We went to Oahu, the island of Oahu, and it was great. We had a lot of fun. I got sunburned the first day. I didn't properly apply sunscreen. I got sunburned the first day. Not too bad, but I started peeling a couple days later, and that's never fun. But I was pretty good on that. Got pretty tan, so I'm feeling good about that. And we did a lot of sightseeing, did some hikes, chilled at the beach, just beautiful stuff down there. Hit a couple breweries because you guys know I love beer. So I hit that, we hit that stuff up, and it was good. A lot of sun, good times, and just kind of a great way to disconnect, from the internet, social media, all that stuff, and just kind of enjoy yourselves. So we certainly did that. I hope you guys, if you're able to do some sort of travel vacation, now that the coronavirus seems to be let up, especially with those new CDC guidelines that just came out, yesterday? Kind of a joke if you ask me, but that's not what we're here to discuss. So for those that are new to the show, remember, the best way you can support the show is to drop a comment on whatever platform you're listening on, whether it be YouTube, Podbean, Spotify. Leave us a rating on the podcast platforms as well. That helps us get into the algorithms, and I certainly do appreciate that. So feel free to leave me a kind rating. You can also find me over on Locals, the Patreon alternative platform. It's really cool. It's a really cool platform, and I highly encourage you guys to check it out. Tons of different creators on there, not only in video games, but sports, politics, etc. out there. So my handle is thegamesitechronicles.locals.com. You can also, I post the podcast there, so if you want to listen to it there or grab the RSS feed, you can. Also, check me out on YouTube. Feel free to subscribe. I'm going to be working on a couple of shorts, vertical videos to get up in there. I've got a couple things I want to get out. And then you can follow me on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast. And then remember, new episodes of the show go live each and every week, Mondays at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now, for this week's episode, I feel like we kind of got a little bit of catch up to do. There's been quite a bit of news this past week, and a couple of things that I kind of cherry picked that I found interesting that I want to cover. Two of them in more of a kind of a deep dive fashion, if you will. to kind of get into the nitty gritty. So this week in this episode, we're going to touch on a couple of key games that got delayed. We obviously got to talk about that Splatoon 3 Nintendo Direct that came out this past week. And then there's been some reports that Microsoft has come out about Call of Duty exclusivity. So I want to talk about that. And it's a really interesting one. So we're going to talk about that. And then, of course, some drama around that latest Forspoken trailer that dropped on Twitter. And I gotta talk about that because it's good. It's good stuff. So before we get into that, though, we got to talk about the games that we are playing. And as I always say in each episode, and I really do mean it, please write in, let me know what games you've been playing so we can incorporate that into the show. I want to kind of introduce that into a segment to talk about some of the games that the audience is playing because I think that is just I think it's cool and it's awesome and really fun to see what people are playing out there. As for me, even though I was on vacation this past week, I did get some gaming in, primarily on my Switch. And as I mentioned on the last episode, I'm going to be playing Live Alive, or Live I'll Live, as I like to call it. That's the new JRPG title that dropped for the Nintendo Switch a couple weeks ago. And I played it on vacation. I'm about 13, 14 hours in or so, and I've played about 4 of the 7 characters. And I'm enjoying it. Thoroughly enjoying this game. This game is really unique, though, like really unique. And I've kind of been thinking about, like, this game came out 28 years ago over in Japan and I think a couple other countries. Never came to the West. But, like, this game is really kind of ahead of its time. It's really unique, even for that time. Like, thinking about that almost 30 years ago, this style of game coming out. Fascinating stuff. But it's good. So each character has its own story, and you pick from the 7 characters, and you can kind of play through the stories. So, like, there's a cowboy, a shinobi, a monk. You go into, like, I think you play a robot in, like, the far distant future. You play in the near future, and I think there's a caveman in there as well. So all kind of different time periods, different styles of characters that you get to play through and kind of experience their stories, and they're all kind of individually crafted, which is pretty cool. And each character has some sort of kind of unique mechanic that they introduce to the game. Now, the battle system is consistent across all of the kind of stories, albeit your characters are different and your abilities and so on and so forth, but the premise, the basics of the system are the same. And I gotta say, the battle system is pretty unique. It is turn-based, and it's set on, but God, I can't talk. It's a turn-based system, but everything's set on a timer. It kind of reminds me of, like, the original Final Fantasy VII in that regard. I don't know what the formal name for that system is, but you take your turns, and then you got to wait a little bit, and then so on and so forth. But it's also set up on a grid, kind of almost like you'd see in some sort of tactical role-playing game. And so with this, it kind of incorporates a little bit of strategy because each character's abilities can kind of only go a certain distance or certain directions. And so you kind of can move freely around the grid when it's your turn. And you can kind of place your characters strategically to maybe where the opponents or your enemies can't hit you, but you can kind of hit them, or maybe you want to keep your distance to certain characters and so on and so forth. So it's really unique in that regard. And I at first I didn't like it. I'm going to be honest. I didn't really understand it, especially when I was playing the demo back in late June when that dropped. I just didn't really kind of understand it, though I didn't get a lot of time with it, right? But now that I've had more time with it, kind of understand it a little better, I kind of dig it. It's really interesting. So it's fun. Although you're not like doing a lot of grinding or kind of, more traditional JRPGs where you're kind of working on leveling up your character and stuff like that. You certainly do, but because of these are such kind of individual stories, that's not like the main focus. The graphics are beautiful. It's got that Octopath Traveler art style that Square Enix is kind of using on a lot of their games and remakes now. It's just beautiful. The music is great. Kind of each story kind of has some unique soundtracks. That's awesome. And because you're playing so many different characters and playing through all these different stories, it kind of allows you to play it in this kind of bite-sized chunk fashion. And that, from my experience, each character's story takes you approximately 2 to 3 hours, depending on, if you get lost, you kind of take your time with it, or maybe you die a lot, like on the last boss or something like that. And so it's great. Like, you can just kind of consume it that way. And for me, I really appreciate that, because that's kind of the way I like to consume my games, is play, maybe an hour here, a couple hours there, when I, just in and out as time allows and my schedule allows. So it's really perfect for that. Now, the other thing I'll say too about this game, having played 4 of the stories and 4 of the characters, is that I don't really feel like all the stories are created equal. In that, so for example, and this doesn't spoil anything, but like the monk story, I've played through. I'll take a step back. I've played through the shinobi story, the caveman, the monk, and the cowboy. Those are the 4 stories I've played, and by far the shinobi and the cowboy stories were awesome. The cowboy one, but so far is like my favorite. That one was just so good, just awesome. Had your classic kind of Western cliches, but it was just really fun to kind of play that in like this JRPG fashion. But the monk one though, like that one got a little repetitive, a little bit predictable in terms of it's a very classic story. And while I didn't enjoy it, kind of the last section of it, that was pretty fun. But overall I didn't enjoy it as much as I did like some of the others. So we'll see how the last couple of stories wrap up. And then the big thing about this game is I want to know how, if at all these stories tie together. Like, how does this game end? Like, does that happen? Because everything's so unique and it almost disconnected. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm enjoying it. I'm excited to play more of it, and I'll report when I beat it. Now, the other game I've been playing, of course, is now that I'm back from vacation, I dove back into Ghostwire Tokyo. I'm trying to finish that game up, clean up my trophies. I'm close to 40 hours in now. I've done a lot of kind of collectathon grinding a little bit, and then I'm basically reached a point in the game where I can kind of go off and basically go to the end game. And typical with open world games, it's like, okay, if you go past this point, you can't come back to the open world till, after or whatever. And one of the trophies is you have to collect all the spirits before you beat the game. And there's this timed event in the game that you see it early on. I think you see it in the first chapter. And your spirit buddy who possesses you, his name's KK. He tells you you hide from it like this, and it looks terrifying. And I guess it's actually based off Japanese mythology, which is really cool. But ever since then, I've just avoided these things like the plague. Every time I've seen them, I'm like, nope, I don't. That will probably kill me. But apparently, it warps you off if you do come encounter with this parade. It warps you off into this arena. You fight a bunch of bad dudes, and then if you beat them all, you get spirits. So there are like 15,000 or so spirits you need to collect from these timed randomized events that I haven't been doing this entire time, and those are the only spirits I need. And since it is kind of RNG based, I'm getting really frustrated with it. It's just annoying, because I've been looking it up in terms of like, where do these things spawn, how often do they spawn, and it's just at the point where I just kind of have I wait for it, and I go to this place spawn. Oh, it's not here. Maybe check another spot, because there's only a handful of spots that it supposedly spawns. And I just don't understand, since it's RNG based from my understanding, it's just annoying. I hate this type of stuff. Like when you tie trophies to RNG based things, it's so annoying. And this is the problem I came with Returnal, right? I talked about this early on when we started the podcast. I still want to go. I would love to get the platinum trophy for Returnal. But the only thing I've left is the logs, which are RNG based in terms of their locations and all that. And it's just, I'm annoyed. I'm a little bit annoyed. Like, have you guys ever tried to do, like, play a game, try to get all the achievements or the trophies, and it ends up being such a task that you end up not liking the game? I feel like that's starting to happen with me because I've gushed about this game. I still think it's fun and I want to see the story through. Like, I'm like dying to just go see the end part of this game and see how this story plays out. But I want to get all the trophies. So I'm just a little annoyed with that. So once I beat that, though, I'm looking forward to another game. They dropped the demo for the Dialog Chronicles. So it dropped on Switch, PlayStation, and I think PC. And so I downloaded it, got it out, loaded up, ready to go on my PlayStation 5. And I've watched a little bit of gameplay, and I gotta say, it looks freaking cool. I'm getting like Valkyria Chronicle vibes and Fire Emblem vibes. So I really want to try this game out, but the completionist in me wants to beat Ghostwire Tokyo before I do that. So just got to get that game out of the way, get the platinum, call it a day. It goes back on the shelf, and I'm ready to move on. So let's get into some news items. Let's talk about a couple different stories. First thing I wanted to touch on is a couple game delays. I mentioned there are two games that have recently been delayed that I think are pretty big. A couple games I'm excited to play that I wanted to touch on. The first is Metal Slug Tactics. This game got delayed into 2023. Now, for those of you who don't know, Metal Slug Tactics is basically a tactical, I want to say RPG. I don't know if there's RPG elements in it, but it's a tactical strategy game based in the Metal Slug universe with the Metal Slug characters. Looks really, really cool. Check out the trailer. It's coming out for, I think, only Switch and PC, at least at launch. So I'm definitely looking forward to getting that on my Switch, and I think it'll be such a perfect Switch game to have. And the news came about a tweet. Came out. The tweet was posted on August 11th from the publisher Dotemu, and they tagged the developer. What is it? Like Here Studios, I think is the name. They basically just said, hey, we need more time. That's basically what the tweet says. We need more time for the game. So it's moved into 2023. Like I said, I think this game looks awesome. The art style is really cool. I rewatched the trailers just to kind of refamiliarize myself, and I forgot that they have like these anime style cutscenes. Looks great. Looks so good. And then obviously the classic Metal Slug kind of pixely art style for their characters. It's very iconic, I would say. Looks so good. So I'm so pumped for this game. So I'm bummed that it got delayed. But delays are inherently good things. It should make the game better. That way they can finish it, polish it up, and all that stuff. So it'll be a good thing in the end, but I'm just bummed because I was really looking forward to this game. Now, I gotta be honest, I don't have much of a history with Metal Slug. Like, I've dabbled in, I think they had some arcade games back in the day, and I've dabbled in those. And, every now and then I've played a Metal Slug game. And I think I have a PSP version on my PS Vita of a Metal Slug game. But it's just not something I'm super familiar with. They're fun. It's not a franchise I've gotten really, really into. But this game might just rope me into it even more. So looking forward to that, but we got to wait till next year. The other game, an even bigger game that I think a lot of folks, especially my buddy Cotton, he tweeted me about it. Hogwarts Legacy has been delayed to February 10th, 2023. Now, the game tweeted out the news, and then multiple outlets reported it, picked it up. And if you'll recall, this game was originally going to come out in 2021, then delayed to 2022. Then we got that in-depth state of play that we covered here on this podcast, continuing to say that it'll come out in 2022, and now it's been delayed to 2023. So it kind of makes you wonder what's going on there a little bit. Now, I'm disappointed in this for sure, because I think after seeing that state of play and that in-depth gameplay, it just looks awesome. This game looks super awesome and really ambitious, I got to say. But in knowing that it's pretty ambitious, I'm not too surprised, to be honest. And, I think there's a common sentiment out there that a lot of people just kind of expect games to be delayed now, post the coronavirus era. Which that's fair. I think that's fair. But one thing that I think is important to note, the developer Avalanche Software, which is not to be confused with Avalanche Studios. And Avalanche Studios are the people that did like Rage 2, Just Cause 4, Mad Max, etc. So this is Avalanche Software. Difference. They don't really have a game like this under their belt. I was looking at their prior games, and their most recent games are all the Disney Infinity games from 2013 to 2017. And then prior to that was just a bunch of licensed games, primarily, going back into the early 2000s. So they've never done anything to this scale that I could see. Now, again, I never played the Disney Infinity games, but I think we all kind of know what kind of games those are. This looks much more ambitious. Obviously, it's going to have lots of RPG systems, mechanics in there. I would assume a big open world. Like this, they've never done anything like this, so it makes sense that they need some more time to polish it. And I'm sure WB's like, we want to get this one right. This is a big title for us, so I don't know. I think it makes sense to me. So Avalanche, take your time, make it good, and we'll see you in February of 2023. Now, the next bit of news I wanted to touch on, that we have to touch on, is that Splatoon 3 Nintendo Direct. Now, I remember seeing the news pop up on my phone. I think it was Monday, still in Hawaii, and I'm like, oh, because Hawaii has a time difference from where I'm at. I think it's 3 hours before, or 3 hours earlier. And I was like, oh crap, because I was thinking it was tomorrow, like the next day. And I was like, I'm gonna have to get up like at 3 a.m. to watch this. But it ended up being when I'm back in the Pacific Northwest, and so I was like, okay, I can watch it in normal, Pacific Standard Time, normal time, so it shouldn't be that bad. But they dropped the Direct. It was just over 30 minutes long, and after I actually watched it just earlier today, the day I'm recording this episode, and it basically just provided kind of a basic overview of the Splatoon 3, obviously the entire game, the different modes in there, but almost to the level where like you haven't played a Splatoon game, kind of the how it works, their main game modes, and all the kind of mechanics in there. And for, I guess, an experienced player like myself who've played the previous games, a little bit of it's kind of like, okay, like this is not what I expected at all. Like not even close. So I was a little disappointed in that approach, but there are quite a few things that they covered. Again, it's just 30 minutes long, a little too long for given what they showed off, but a couple things I think to be excited about. So I want to go through some of the highlights that I notated here from the Direct, and then kind of share some thoughts as we go through. So some of the highlights that they went over include the game's going to have new weapons, new apparel items, new specials. That's expected. New techniques they mentioned, it's just like regular techniques and like a moving technique. So one of them was a squid roll, and that allows you to basically kind of turn around. Like when you're a squid in the ink, you can basically squid roll and then complete 180 direction, which is kind of cool, I guess. And then a squid surge, which allows you to kind of surge up walls really fast. They showed off some of the new stages, and they also said all previous weapons will be available in this game, and there's a ton of them, so that's pretty cool. You can kind of bring over your favorite weapons, which I like that. It seems like they're also introducing a new way to buy weapons. So I think previously you just used kind of the currency of the game, but now you buy weapons with what's called Sheldon licenses, and you get these when you level up your character, or by using the same weapon and leveling up that weapon, at least as I understand it. So kind of incentivizing you to use your weapons for a while, and maybe even use different weapons to level up to get more of these Sheldon licenses as you want to buy more weapons. So I think that's pretty interesting. That's new. I dig it. Another thing that I believe is new, unless they recently patched this in Splatoon 2, and by recently I mean in the last year and a half since I've touched that game. You can basically add new abilities to gear. So in Splatoon, if you didn't know, your gear, like so your shirt, your shoes, your pants, etc., your hats, whatever, they all have kind of different abilities with them. And now in this game, you can actually, you go to one of the characters of the game and you can add abilities or change, like kind of change, swap them out, as I understand it. So I think that's pretty cool. I like that because there are some cool, clothing items that like, oh, like aesthetically, you're like, oh, that's awesome. I want to wear that. But then the abilities kind of maybe doesn't fit your play style or is, not that great. So having the ability to kind of change that or add something to it is awesome. I really dig that. Another new item that they showed off is you can rewatch battles and share them. So this kind of reminds me, I can't remember what it was called, but I know Call of Duty did this, where you can rewatch your matches and then freely kind of roam the camera to replay the matches and swap between players. And it's essentially the same thing here in Splatoon. I think this is awesome. And I think this is also probably introduced to help with the push, because this is kind of an esports game. I know they do a bunch of championships and competitions with Splatoon, so probably to help fit in that a little bit easier, which makes sense. But I think it's cool. They also talked about some of the customizability in the game in terms of you get these customizable lockers, which is kind of random. They kind of act, the way they showed it off and the way I'm understanding it is they kind of act like custom calling cards that are shown off kind of at the end game. And then they also have like custom name tags, similar to like I think what you'd see in like a Call of Duty. They talked about seasonal content, so they're going to have basically new seasonal content every quarter for the next 2 years. So it's going to be promoted for a while, or supported for a while is what I mean. And then they showed off a new game mode called Turf Battles, or Table Turf Battles, excuse me. And this is a card game that has 150 cards to collect, and it's basically a 1v1 spin-off of the main turf mode. And so you play these various cards to cover the most ink, and I'm sure there's different abilities and things like that, but it looks really, really interesting, and not something I would have ever expected in a Splatoon game. So I'll be curious to try that one out. Then they talked a little bit about Salmon mode. There's going to be some new bosses. They showed off a couple of those. That's exciting. Salmon mode is just such a fun mode to play. It's a blast. I'm looking forward to more of that. Then they finally showed off some single player. This is what I was looking forward to. And based on what I'm seeing, it seems like it's mostly kind of the same format in terms of the various levels, various weapons, puzzles, and stuff like that. But I guess it's continuing the story from the previous games, and we'll kind of wrap up this trilogy. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the stories. I didn't really pay attention to it. So there's that. And I never got around to playing the, the Octo DLC on Splatoon 2, which I've heard is actually really good, but I never got around to that. Then they also talked about the companion app, Splatnet 3, which is basically just a section within the Nintendo Switch mobile app. Then they finally got to Amiibos. You can scan in your previous Amiibos. And the best part, this is my favorite announcement from the Direct, new Splatoon 3 Amiibos. Ladies and gentlemen, there are new Splatoon Amiibos coming to us. And I am so excited about that. So excited. So it's two, I think it's a Inkling, an Octoling, and then a small fry, like fish one that looks kind of cool. However, the downside to this announcement for Amiibos is they're coming this holiday, so a little bit later. And this is interesting. I've kind of speculated when we were talking about Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, those Amiibos, because here in the States we only got the one that only came in the collector's edition, and the other two that were originally solicited just were never went up for pre-order or never available. However, word on the street is they're coming soon. I've seen rumors of that, so I'm looking forward to it. But also, like in the Smash Bros. World, they still haven't released all those DLC fighter Amiibos. And then they finally announced, I think recently, the Steve and Alex Minecraft Amiibo characters. Those just went up for pre-order and are coming out, I think, early September. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm probably going to unbox those on my YouTube channel. So keep an eye out for that. And so there has to be something going on with the production or manufacturing of Amiibos, because they are it just seems like they're way behind. I know the Amiibo craze has kind of died down for a lot of people. I still love collecting them. I still try to get them. And if you were to see my office, I have two massive shelves behind me that are primarily covered in Amiibos. And then I've got some of my games down towards the bottom. But I love it. I love the Amiibos. Absolutely love them. So yeah, just something's got to be going on, and it's kind of a bummer. But I'm excited. New Splatoon 3 Amiibos. Very excited about that. Then towards the end of the direct, they also talked about that they're adding a large-scale paid DLC. So I'm assuming it's maybe another single-player expansion, that's exciting. One of the other things, and I think this is actually a cool feature, if I understand how it works correctly. So you have this like in-game like mobile cell phone, and that you can actually just check the news there. So with Splatoon, every time you log into the game, you got to sit through whatever updates via this like newscast every single time you log in. And it'll tell you like what maps are in rotation, what game modes are in rotation, and whatever updates or new weapons are available. It's annoying if you just want to kind of go in and go play a match or two. And so if this is what I think it is, it might allow you to just go in, do what you need to do. But then if you want to check the updates, bust out your phone in game, of course, and check them out there. If that's how it is, that's a great feature. Probably a game too late, but that is a great feature. I approve. 2 thumbs up for that. And then, Splat Fests. That's a big kind of in-game competitive mode that like a seasonal type thing that they do. And with this, though, there's actually a new turf war mode during Splatfest where 3 teams will face off to each other. So traditionally with turf wars and Splatfest, you pick a side, right? It's like red versus blue. You pick either red or you pick blue, and then you go in, you play multiplayer modes, and then whichever side wins the most matches comes out victorious. So they did one like ketchup or mustard, right? So you pick I'm on team ketchup or team mustard, and then you battle it out. Well, now there's going to be 3 options. So I think the first one they showed off was like rock, paper, scissors. So you choose one of those, you do that. But then they're going to have turf war game, like multiplayer game sessions where 3 teams are facing off against each other on one map. And this sounds awesome. It sounds just like utter chaos, but I love it. I think it'll be a lot of fun to have. You'll have 12 players out there on the map. It's just going to be just nuts, just total nuts. And I definitely want to try that out. And then the last thing they mentioned is that they're doing a world premiere Splatfest for Splatoon 3 on August 27th. So that's a Saturday from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So that's when you get to try your first hand at Splatoon 3 multiplayer and play in a Splatfest. So that'll be fun. That'll be super exciting. I'm definitely going to hop in and try that out. So overall, I think there's some cool announcements. I've said it before. I'm super looking forward to this game. I think it'll be a ton of fun. I'm a big fan of Splatoon. Excited about the Amiibos. That's the best part. And, I think there's some exciting things that are coming to this game. I just don't think we needed a 30-minute direct to show it all. Like, they could have just, posted some of this stuff on social media, maybe gave us a 15-minute quick direct to give us some highlights, called it a day. I don't know, too long. But either way, this game's coming out soon, September 9th. So I'm looking forward to it. Hell yeah. Now I want to get into some of the meat and potatoes with this story that I saw pop up. And it's basically Microsoft has come out and said that making Call of Duty exclusive to Xbox is not profitable. And I picked this up because, one, we recently talked about Call of Duty. And it's hard to avoid Call of Duty within gaming because it's such a big franchise. But I also think this is interesting because, one, it answers about Call of Duty's exclusivity, but I also think it implies a couple things about the Xbox ecosystem. So we'll get to that. So I found this in an article from Video Games Chronicle, VGC, and basically Microsoft made a statement, said making Call of Duty would not be profitable, as we mentioned. And this, of course, just the sheer existence of this article has been just fuel to the console war fire. And It's toxic out there, ladies and gentlemen. So stay away if you can. But it's just fuel to that fire. Along with other reports that I didn't really want to dive into it, but there's other reports talking about Sony signing folks to exclusivity contracts, but within there's a clause that says those games can't come to Game Pass, and of course, Xbox players and fans are on Twitter just I think everyone's kind of blowing this out of proportion, but I don't want to dive into that right now. I want to talk about this profitability in Call of Duty specifically, but it's just fuel to that console war fire. And I want to start off though, before we dive into a couple things, I want to read some of the article from Video Games Chronicle. That way I think it provides some good context here. So, from videogameschronicle.com, the article is titled, Microsoft has reiterated its claim that it doesn't have plans to make Call of Duty an Xbox exclusive should it successfully acquire Activision Blizzard. So in the article it says, quote, in a document sent to Brazil's Administrative Council for Economic Defense discussing the proposed acquisition, Microsoft claims that any concerns that Call of Duty would no longer appear on PlayStation are unfounded because it would simply not be profitable for Microsoft. Microsoft says, regardless of how unsurprising Sony's criticism of content exclusivity is, given that PlayStation's entire strategy has been centered on exclusivity over the years, the reality is that the strategy of retaining Activision Blizzard's games by not distributing them on rival console shops would simply not be profitable for Microsoft, the company claims in the docs. Such a strategy would be profitable only if Activision Blizzard's games were able to attract a sufficiently large number of gamers to the Xbox console ecosystem, and if Microsoft could earn enough revenue from game sales to offset the losses from not distributing such games on rival consoles, it adds. As if that weren't enough, exclusivity strategies still result in title-specific costs, it claims, given further information that has been redacted from the document, likely due to confidentiality. Such costs, added to the lost sales estimated, there's blank there because it's redacted, above mean that Microsoft would not be able to offset the losses by earning higher revenues in the Xbox ecosystem as a result of implementing exclusivity. End quote. Actually, there's one more paragraph here I want to read. Quote, this is especially true considering the gamer-centric as opposed to device-centric strategy that Microsoft has pioneered with Game Pass, and the fact that PlayStation has the most loyal users across its various generations, with all indications that brand loyalty accrued in the previous rounds of the console wars, suggesting that PlayStation will continue to have a strong market position. End quote. Sorry, I wanted to finish that one. That point's important. There's a lot. There's a lot there. So firstly, this reiterates that Call of Duty is staying on PlayStation. We talked about that. I talked about that with Cotton. Staying on PlayStation, I think, is good news for PlayStation fans, and I think this is a no-brainer, in my opinion. Maybe not even my opinion. Objectively, I think this is a no-brainer because Call of Duty is consistently the best PlayStation game seller every year. Every year. That's the top PlayStation game in sales. So that's a no-brainer. Secondly, I think this implies two important things about the Xbox ecosystem that I want to touch on. First is, I think this kind of just helps to showcase the how expensive a Call of Duty game is to make. Now, Call of Duty has, at least in present day, I think anywhere from 4 to 5 studios working on a title. Now, it used to be kind of the rotation back in the, when it first started with Infinity Ward and then Treyarch kind of alternating years in terms of making those games. Then they incorporated Sledgehammer, then a couple years later. So it was 3 rotating studios, then Sledgehammer got pulled. I know they've incorporated Raven Software, I believe, and then another studio I think got fed into the mix. And so now I saw an article from Games Radar because I was curious, and it was as of May 2022 that stated over 3,000 people are working on Call of Duty. And I'm sure this also includes Warzone, seasonal content, updates, etc. But that's a lot of people considering, other AAA studios, maybe have a couple hundred employees, working on a game. That's a lot of people. And that's Got to be expensive. It's got to be expensive. And I think that's pretty indicative there. So given that high cost, they have to maintain sales. They've got to maintain those sales. And one of the things I was really curious in regards to sales is, what is the ratio between sales for PlayStation versus Xbox? Because I was just curious. So I did find an article from November of 2021 from gamesindustry.biz. It was talking about Call of Duty Vanguard. That's the latest Call of Duty that have come out. And they said that PlayStation accounted for approximately 70%, and Xbox, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and Series S were about 30% of the sales there. And I don't know if that's applicable. I'll be candid. I don't know if that's applicable across all of the Call of Duty games. But I think just for the sake of argument, let's be a little generous and say it's a 60-40 split between PlayStation and Xbox for Call of Duty games. Why would Xbox get rid of 60% of their sales? Like, on top of that, in that player base, all of the microtransaction revenue from that side of the house. Why would they get rid of that? That just doesn't make sense. I think the counter argument to that is that they'd convert people over to the Xbox ecosystem and then get Game Pass subscriptions, etc. And I do think they would attract some of that market. Certainly, if you're a big Call of Duty fan, you primarily play on PlayStation and then it's no longer on there. Yeah, you'd want to go, if you want to continue playing it, you're going to have to move to a different platform. So I think there are some folks in that camp that would be willing to make the switch. But I think for a lot of folks, that's not the only game that they play. And Microsoft themselves admitted that PlayStation fans are loyal. So converting them is going to be difficult. They admit that is a task that will likely not play out. And that's why I wanted to read that last part of the article, because that's important. So they admit how loyal PlayStation users are. So again, why not? Why just axe that percentage? Doesn't make sense. The other thing that I think this kind of implies is that Xbox gamers don't buy games. And this is going to, I think, maybe ruffle some feathers out there. And I know this is not a blanket statement, and I'm not meaning it to be a blanket statement, but I think you can kind of derive that based on the way that Xbox is talking about it. Because they know that the sales on Xbox don't equal the sales on PlayStation. And if it was removed from PlayStation, they're not going to make those sales. This doesn't even account for the Game Pass thing. We'll get to that in a second. But I still kind of buy into this theory that on the Xbox ecosystem, people aren't buying nearly as many games. I can't tell you how many times I've seen, when it comes to Xbox, from Xbox, players and fans, people that partake in that ecosystem heavily, talk about anytime it's about a new game or, some sort of game, they're like, the question is, oh, is it coming to Game Pass? Or, oh, I'll wait for Game Pass. Or, man, I'm glad I waited for Game Pass to play this game. Now that it, could have bought it, but now, now it's here on Game Pass, so I don't have to buy it anymore. I see so much of that sentiment out there when it comes to Xbox and that ecosystem. That's a very common sentiment out there that I see. I don't know if you guys have come across that stuff, or even maybe you feel that way. That's what I see out there. Now, I know Microsoft has come out and made the claim that Xbox Game Pass subscribers, they buy more games and spend more on the platform. And okay, that may be true. Maybe, but if it is, I've yet to see any I've yet to see any quantifiable data on that. It's just that they come out, unless I'm wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong. If there's some quantifiable data out there, I'd love to see it. But from what I've seen, they usually just make that statement and then move on. It's just sales tactic. I don't know. It's just corporate lingo, corporate speak. It doesn't mean anything. So, given this, and the fact that they'd be dropping the majority percentage of sales, like we just talked about on the PlayStation side, it just doesn't add up and make sense. And this also doesn't account for if they were to put this game on Game Pass, because that would even cause less folks to buy the game. Because anyone who's subscribed to Game Pass would presume to just play it there. Maybe some would still buy the game, maybe. But I think the majority would just not buy it and instead just play it on Game Pass. Now, would this cause more people to subscribe to Game Pass? I think if you're on the Xbox ecosystem, probably. You know, I don't know what that number would look like, but I certainly think it would increase the subscriptions. But I don't think that would equal the sales if they were just to sell the game straight up and not put it on Game Pass. I maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't see it. And now another question is, would this increase microtransactions? Because maybe you have more folks that are kind of buying, you know, playing the game now that it's available on Xbox. Maybe you get the more casual players who are involved in the Xbox ecosystem kind of getting on board and hopping into this game, you know, like we've seen with, let's say, you know, Forza, for example, Forza Horizon 5, possibly. But I would assume not by much, because Call of Duty is already so big. Like, I feel like we're at a point with Call of Duty where you're either invested in this franchise or maybe kind of casually step in and out, or you don't care about it. I've kind of fallen in the camp where I don't care about it anymore, but there is an appeal. I was talking about it on the last episode, and after the conversation I had with Cotton about Call of Duty Warzone, like, it sounds pretty fun, actually. I kind of want to just give it a go. And I actually recently picked up Call of Duty Vanguard because it was on sale for like $10 at Best Buy. So I casually go in. I guess maybe I casually just every couple of years go into this franchise. But I think there are a lot of players that just, they don't care about Call of Duty. That's not their jam anymore. They've moved on from it. And just because it's on Game Pass now, I don't think they come back. Now, again, this is just pure assumption on my part, but it's based on how I have read into the market. But also, so back to the microtransactions, okay, maybe you get some more, but you're also getting less sales. So does the increase in microtransactions from those who are not buying the game, is that more than the sales? Or would it be better to get the sales plus the microtransactions? You know what I mean? And my thing with Game Pass, and I guess I'm going to get on my soapbox here for a second, because I feel like I'm beating a dead horse with this, because we've talked about this a couple different times when we talk about Game Pass. But Xbox doesn't care about game sales. That's clear. That's clear as day. Just look at how they talk about their games. Look how they talk about Forza Horizon 5, Halo. Oh, look, we had 20 million players, blah, blah, blah. They don't care about sales. That's not their primary objective. Their objective is Game Pass and subscriptions. They're not in the business of selling games anymore, which will be interesting given their recent acquisitions with Activision and Bethesda. But if you're not selling your games, though, you have the subscription pool of money. And that's finite, right? Based on how many people you have subscribed to that pool. And so that pie has to be divided across your studios. And Microsoft, Xbox has a lot of studios. So you've got to take that pie, and I don't know what the number is, and we could estimate it. You know, I think they have like 25, 27 million subscribers. I don't know if it's fair to times it by the annual one, but because people come in for $1, they come in with a couple free months, etc. There's some people that have years. I don't know if that's a fair estimation, but whatever that number is, you have that finite pool of number that has to be divided amongst your studios. So your first party studios are going to get their chunks first. And I don't know even if that just your first party studio, since Microsoft has so many, covers all of the costs. Don't know. But then you also have your second party studios that you're in a partnership and relationship with, and then obviously third party studios that you're buying their games to get more content onto your subscription platform. Now, again, I understand Xbox and Microsoft, they got deep pockets, right? So they can lose money on this. It's not a big deal to them. But you still have that finite pool of money. I don't know if that finite pool of money is enough money for all that, for everyone to go around and cover all the costs and then make money on top of that. We already know Game Pass is not profitable. So I don't know what that point that point of conjunction is to when they become profitable and then everyone has enough money. If you're not including sales on there. And if you're not selling your games, these developers have to find another way to generate money. And that's why you see a lot of microtransactions, battle passes, season passes, paid DLC, all that stuff injected into games because they have to make up that money elsewhere. And if Xbox is now making games for Game Pass, and all of their first-party studios are doing that, including Activision Blizzard, which I don't think will be the case, but if it's down that road, then they have to change the way that they make games and almost develop them as such as if it's going to be a free-to-play title. Yes, it's behind a paywall, a subscription paywall, but it's essentially free-to-play for those who subscribe to it. And what does that mean? Microtransactions and all the like. And what I don't want to happen, and the reason why I have a problem with this, is that what I don't want to happen is what happened with mobile gaming, to where it's this race to the bottom and you get the mindset, like, no, who wants to buy a mobile game? Does anyone want to pay for a mobile game on their phone? No, it's all free to play, and they're all just constantly injected with ads. And you get so many of these games that are very predatory, and they're just trash because they are purely designed to take your money. And I don't want that to happen in the console space. I don't think it will right away, but that's my biggest fear. And that's why I bring this up as a concern. And that's why I bring caution to this when we talk about Game Pass as it relates to video games and in the industry. And with Call of Duty, I would hate to see something like that happen, just to where I already know it's heavily, monetized, but there is a degree of quality there, albeit the last few years it's gone down from what I've heard, but we'll see what happens. Now, overall with this new story, again, I don't think this is too surprising that Xbox has come out and said this. Why wouldn't they keep their game on the PlayStation platform? Because if they do, every time someone buys Call of Duty on PlayStation, Microsoft and Xbox are getting 30% of that transaction. And here's the other thing. Microsoft would then own PlayStation's top selling game every year. That is not a good position for PlayStation to be in. And it'd almost be as like Microsoft has just kind of got Sony by the balls at that point, when or Xbox kind of has Sony by the balls for PlayStation. It's not a good position to be in, which is why, PlayStation, why all this kind of business war is going on. They're playing these games, like the exclusivity thing, etc. This is business. They're trying to protect their business. It makes sense. You know what I mean? But let me know what you guys think about my little rant there in this, all of this about Call of Duty, its exclusivity, not being profitable, and of course, Game Pass. Please share your thoughts. Let me know what you think. The last thing I want to touch on here is about Forspoken. Remember, Forspoken is that upcoming Square Enix game, PS5 exclusive. I think it's coming to PC as well. And this past week, Square Enix posted a tweet about Forspoken. It's a little marketing, your standard kind of marketing tweet. Got a 30-second or so clip of the game, showed off some gameplay, and it's got some dialogue in there. And boy, this has sparked some drama, and a slew of memes. Beautiful, beautiful memes have just arisen from the ashes of this tweet, and it's glorious. Now, why has all this happened? It's because the dialogue is bad. It is so cringy, so bad. Now, I'm going to see if I can play it. Hopefully it comes through the microphone here, because I just want you to hear it, because it is god awful. Let me pull it up here. No, I don't want to subscribe to your newsletter, Kotaku. Let me go up here. Okay, I'm going to turn up the volume. Let me see if you guys can hear this. So, for context here in the video, they're just showing off various kind of combat and gameplay where remember she's kind of, jumping or kind of flying through the air or fighting different enemies, etc. Let's see if this will play for me.
So let me get this straight. I'm somewhere that's not what I would call Earth. I'm seeing freaking dragons, and oh yeah, I'm talking to a cop. Yeah, okay, that is something I do now. I do magic, kill jacked up beasts. I'll probably fly next.
That's it. I hope that came through. I'll see how it comes through in post, but that's it. So I'm in some foreign land. Freaking dragons. That's something I'm talking to a guy like, oh my God, that's so bad. It's just so bad. And the delivery is just so generic. Oh my God. It's how I don't understand how you can listen to that and be like, that's okay. That's acceptable. Because it's not. That is just cringy. Like, who talks like that? Genuinely. Who talks like that? I don't understand. Now, I've seen some defense of this dialogue, and I kind of want to go through that. So a couple defenses I've seen of this when you kind of go through the comments of the tweet, which I highly recommend you do, because that's where you get to the memes, and we'll touch on a few of those because they are chef's kiss. So some people have said that this fits in with the context of the situation. So the situation, the kind of premise of this game is this 20-something woman from New York gets transported to this far-off distant land out of the blue. And that's how someone in that situation would react and talk. And they say, like, how else would she reply and act? I don't know. Maybe you would be like, okay, where am I? What is this place? How did I get here? What is going on? Maybe something like that rather than like, okay, so I'm in this far off land and there's freaking dragons. I don't know anyone. I don't know anyone who talks like that. You'd be like, if I saw a dragon, I'm in some far crazy world, just randomly transported. Like, is that a dragon? Like, okay, those are real here, I guess. I don't know. Maybe that was cringy too. I don't think that's how people normally talk. Another defense of it is I've heard people say we don't have enough context and these are just small clips. They're not representative of the game. We'll come back to this point in a moment, but I also want to say that every time we've seen this game, it's delivered with context. That is what they're showing us is the context of the game. What additional context are you looking for? Story beats? Character development? I don't understand how any additional context is going to make that better. But we're going to come back to that point too. The last thing I see is, there's just folks straight up saying, oh, this isn't that bad. Like, what are you talking about? And those are the people I just don't understand. Because it's cringy. Like, again, who talks like that? I feel like you can do a better job here. I really do. And the other part about it too that I want to mention is like, it's also delivered very generic and almost monotone. Like, there's no passion behind it. There's no, it doesn't feel real. It just feels fake. I don't know. That's how I'm perceiving it. And this isn't anything against the actress, the voice actress at all, because it very well could be a situation where she's just put in a bad situation and that's how they want the lines delivered, which sucks because it's just, I'm seeing freaking dragons. I'm talking to my cufflinks. And that's just a thing I do now. That's just what I do, No, I don't know. I really don't. Nobody says things like that. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm just old and jaded. And maybe this is how the Gen Zers and the TikTokers, that's how they all talk now. And yeah, I'm just out of touch, apparently. But I'm not the only one who thinks it's bad, ladies and gentlemen. Now, surprisingly enough, I found a good Kotaku article talking about this. And I want to read part of it towards the end because they share a bunch of the memes, which we're going to go through here shortly. But they talk about something that I think is important, again, to answer that second point that I was mentioning. So towards the bottom of the article, they say, quote, "Finally, for anyone wondering if this trailer is somehow not representative of the game itself, here's another useful passage from Isaiah's, one of their writers, preview of the game. Another concern I had going into the preview was how often Frey and Cuff would quip at each other during gameplay, which was a Marvel movie amount from both its initial trailer, the Game Awards trailer, and my hands-off look. These quips would include swearing during the banter between Frey and Cuff during combat encounters. In response to this concern, Square Enix said the intention for the banter was to showcase Frey's complexity as a, quote, complex, imperfect, and raw character, end quote, while making her more relatable as a self-insert for players to the bonkers setting she now found herself in, end quote, for the article. So it's not just a small sample. Everyone who's seen this game has said it's throughout the game. And as as a writer here who has previewed the game said, this happens during combat encounters. Like you're just going to hear this all the time. This is not just a small sample size. I can't help but laugh because it's like, okay, this is it, folks. This is the game. You're going to get this throughout the entire game. Now, I will say the combat does look awesome. Looks like it could be a lot of fun. I still think the world looks a little empty. I still think the game overall looks generic, but the combat looks fun. I think it could be a lot of fun. But that dialogue and this generic character just hurts. It hurts pretty bad. But let me read this last sentence in his quote again. In response to this concern, Square Enix said the intention for the banter was to showcase Frey's complexity. Jesus, I can't talk. Complexity as a complex, we're going to use that word twice because we don't have any other words, imperfect and raw character, while making her more relatable as a self-insert for players to the bonkers setting she now found herself in. First of all, she's a complex character. She's raw. And that's why she talks like this. Because that's relatable. I mean, you immediately think about the Steve Buscemi meme where he's, wearing the backwards hat. He's got a skateboard over his shoulder and he's like, "How do you do, fellow kids?" That's immediately what comes to mind with this. Like, no. I don't know anyone who talks like this. Even younger people. I don't know anyone who talks like this. Maybe I'm wrong. But I don't think I am. It's just bad. I don't know how anyone relates to that. Because, again, I don't think anyone would respond to the article in that. No, it's not the article, I'm sorry. I don't think anyone would respond to that situation in that manner and just talk like that like a moron. Like, oh, I guess I do this now. I'm just slaying freaking dragons, fighting goblins, and doing magic. And I think there was another one where she's like, "Did I just move that rock with my mind?" What? What is this? Who wrote this garbage? This is not relatable in any way. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I can't. Now, I think one of two things is going to happen with this game. And I don't mean to just constantly shit on it, but it's just really hard to get over this bad dialogue. And everything I've seen in this game, and I've talked about this before, nothing is enticing me about this game. Again, I think the combat, it looks cool, but everything else screams generic mediocrity. But I think two things are going to happen with this game. Two things could happen. One of two things could happen with this game. Sorry. One is it could come out and do relatively well. It'll be fun. It has a good story overall and score around maybe 7 or 8 on the Metacritic. And people will like it. Be able to get past the dialogue. Or the other option is I think it'll come out and it'll do mediocre. Maybe with a 6 on Metacritic. And the consensus will be that the gameplay itself is fun, like the combat, but the story is trash and the writing and dialogue is awful. And then what we're going to see from all the journo media types, we'll see articles coming out blaming racism and bigotry on the game's failure because the protagonist is a black female. Because you got to check those boxes, you know what I mean? And it has nothing to do with the awful dialogue and, robot performance and poor story. They're going to blame that. I can just see it happening because we've seen this with other things, especially with like some of the Star Wars stuff in the last few years. I can just see it happening. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I hope this game comes out and it's awesome and you can get in the dialogue, you can get over it because everything else is just exceptional. I hope that's the case. But again, everything we've seen in this game is telling me that the latter will happen. But like I said, I think the best part about this whole debacle, this whole drama, are the memes. And so many of them people. It's also funny because there's so many people in the reply that state the gameplay looks good, but I'm going to play this on mute or turn off the dialogue. That tells you something, people. But let's listen to a couple of these memes. So basically, the way the meme works is basically people are taking another game and then doing the same dialogue over it. So let's see here. Here's a Tony Hawk one. Again, let's see if you can hear it.
So, okay, here I am, doing everything that I can, holding on to what I freaking am, pretending I'm like some jacked up Superman. Yeah, okay, that's something I do now.
Oh, that's so good. That is awesome because that's literally one of the songs in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and it's just chef's kiss. But do you not hear how bad that is? And it's god awful. God awful. Okay, here's another good one. This is Bloodborne. I love it.
So let me get this straight. I'm somewhere that's not what I would call England. I'm seeing freaking werewolves. And, oh yeah, I'm talking to a doll.
Oh, man. I mean, it's so good. The memes are spectacular. There's one other one where this guy does... let's see. Oh, is it on here? There was another one where the guy did Super Mario Odyssey. And it's just golden. Let me grab my phone here. Hold on. Because there's some really good ones. One sec. Oh, okay. So here's one. Chris Raygun, who is a big YouTuber. He is also a co-host on the Sacred Symbols podcast, which I listen to. He did one for God of War, and it's hilarious. Let's see if I can get this playing here.
Call Athens.
Okay, here we go.
So, let me get this straight. I'm somewhere that's not what I would call Athens. I'm seeing freaking trolls, and oh yeah, I'm talking to my son. So, let me...
It's so bad. It's so bad. It's good. The memes are just so good. There's one other one I wanted to find on here because it is just hilarious. There's so many good ones. There's a lot of them there aren't even videos. They just do they just do like text in the reply. So here's like a Dark Souls one. I'm an undead. In fact, the chosen undead. So, kind of the big shot around here. So look, I got to find a way to link the first flame, but see, I got to get through all these zombies, gargoyles, knights, and that half woman, half spider thing. Oh, did I forget to mention I can't die? That was a very bad act for me, but you get the point. Let me see if I can find that one because it's so good. Oh, here's a Dead Space one. So yeah, my girlfriend is dead. The mangled corpses of the engineering team are trying to kill me with freaking bone swords. I'm pretty sure I've avoided the warranty on these tools. And worst of all, there's no Wi-Fi up here. Oh, that is good. That is a good one. But I don't know. As I'm reading through these and you hear these, like, do you not see how unrelatable it is? It's just terrible. And that's why it's funny in the context of these memes. Just so good. Here's one about Resident Evil. Hey, what's poppin'? I'm Leon Kennedy, and today, would you believe, is my first day as a rookie cop in Raccoon City? I'm so freaking excited. But wait, is that a dang zombie? What the heck is going on around here? And who's that bombshell in the red dress? Auga. Oh my gosh, it's so good. So good. Oh, here we go. Here's a Red Dead one. This one's good.
Yup, that's me, all right. A freaking cowboy. I have a rootin' tootin' good time in the West. I do shooting, kill the KKK. I mean, they're like totally racist. I know. Awkward turtle. Gosh dang it, I'll probably see freaking aliens next. Did I mention I'm talking to a freaking horse? Yeehaw, giddy up. Am I right? Yup.
Oh, it's just good stuff. And I love that this is turned into a meme. And I don't know, man. We'll see how this game does when it comes out next year. I think this game's also coming out in February, right? Because it was delayed. So we'll see. We'll see how it comes out. But again, I don't understand how anyone could defend this dialogue. It's just objectively bad. But I don't know. We'll see. I actually, you know, this is Square Enix, so I wouldn't be surprised if we get a demo of this game maybe in January, because I know they've been pretty consistent with their demos for their upcoming games. And there's one for Babylon's Fall. I know their Dialog Chronicles, they just dropped that. I think there's going to be one for the Elysian profile game. And then another game I can't think of that escapes me that they've done a demo for. So they're pretty good about that. So maybe we'll get to try a demo, and who knows? Maybe it'll be worth picking up and trying out. We shall see. But that's all I got for this week's episode of the podcast. Went on a little bit longer, but like I said, we had a lot of news to catch up on, and those last two stories, I really wanted to get on my soapbox and go deep, if you know what I mean. So that'll do it. Again, I appreciate your love, kindness, and support out there. Remember, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave us a rating on the podcast platforms. That helps us get into the algorithms. And most of all, leave me a comment. If you have any questions for me or about the show, please hit me up on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast, or again, drop a comment right into the show. Love to hear from you. I hope you guys have enjoyed the last couple of episodes. They've been fun to do. Stay warm out there. Stay cool out there, because we're still in the mid-heat of summer. Play lots of video games, and until next time, I'm Bonfire, and I will see you online.